Hey Technostuds! So we want availability, but how do we measure this? So let's in this video talk about measuring availability, 5 9's, and what it has to do with SLAs. In this video, we'll have a brief mention around downtime, we'll get into measuring uptime, we'll talk about the 9's, we'll talk about 5 9's specifically, we'll get into SLAs, and wrap things up by talking about SLA durations. When we say something is highly available, it's a concept. It's a subjective idea that something is available most of the time. But we need to measure things. And so that's where downtime comes into play. Downtime is something we can measure. It's not a concept, it's something that we can actually record and measure. And downtime comes in two different elements, as we mentioned before. A frequency, how often it happens, and the duration of how long that downtime is at. So we can measure this and we can add this up to figure out what our total downtime is. And the reverse of that would be uptime. That's the time that our systems are up and running. And a lot of times we express that in a percentage form. And the percent comes from the total time that the system is up divided by the total time it should be up. And so that is a measurement of uptime. So now that we have something that's measurable, downtime and uptime is in a percentage form, we can actually start creating some sort of standards of what we are aspiring to achieve. So an example of this is maybe we're trying to achieve a 90% uptime. That means that we only can have 36 days out of the year of being down, which is actually a lot. Most customers are not going to handle 36 days of downtime. They would get frustrated with you and leave. And we call this a 1.9, which is a pretty poor level of standard here. We could increase it to 95%, which is still 18 days. That's a lot. 97%, which is 10 days. 98%, which is 7.5 days. These are still a lot. 99%, we start 3 days of downtime, and this is not necessarily continuous. That would be pretty devastating, but if it was broken up a little bit, maybe that's okay. We call that 2 9's. 99.9% is a common standard that's out there. This says that you can be down 8 hours out of the year. So this is a very common one, 3 9's. Then we could have 4 9's, 99.99%. That means you can be down 52 minutes out of the year. So that's pretty hard to achieve that. That's getting at a level that is going to be much more difficult to do. And then 5 9's is 99.999%. That means you can be down 5 minutes out of the year, which I can tell you is a pretty hard target to get. Then you can also see that you can continue to increase it to 6, 7, 8, and 9 9's, which gets to some pretty crazy numbers there. You'll see a lot of systems strive for this 3 9's right here. That means 8 hours out of the year you can be down. And that is a somewhat acceptable level. But really the gold standard here is 5 9's. If you can get it down to only 5 minutes of downtime out of the year, that's kind of considered a premium spot. So 5 9's is one that you will see really common out there as a standard to strive for. There are something called service level agreements, or SLAs. And SLAs is somewhat of a guarantee, where you're going to promote that we are going to deliver our services at a certain level. Maybe it's 3 9's, maybe it's 5 9's. And if we don't deliver that certain standard at that level, there possibly is some sort of compensation that we will give you because we haven't upheld our part of the bargain. So even though 5 9's is something to strive for, 3 9's might be something that we put on our SLA. And that's our guarantee that we will at least maintain these 3 9's. And if not, we'll give you a portion of your bill back. And so that is your service level agreements. One thing that's added to a service level agreement is the duration of measurement. And what I mean by that is that you need to know whether you're going to measure this in in a quarter, in a month, or what is that duration? And so as an example, if you're striving for 5 9s, that might be 5 minutes in a year, which is a difficult target. But if you're striving for that in a quarter, that means you can only have 79 seconds of downtime in that quarter. That's 5 9s, the 99.999% for that quarter, for that 3 months. If you're looking at a month, that means you can only have 26 seconds of downtime. It doesn't give you very much wiggle room at all. Another thing that a SLA usually outlines is some sort of maintenance windows. During the maintenance window, you're going to be patching systems and updating different services, perhaps doing some upgrades to the code. And during that time, there's more potential for downtime, and sometimes it can't be avoided. And so you need to schedule some sort of maintenance window. The maintenance windows are times when you can tell your customers, expect maybe some outages. So during the maintenance window, you would have a scheduled time that you could bring systems down for maintenance. In this video, we talked about how high availability really isn't a measurement. It's just more of a concept, versus something like downtime, which is measurable. And we can take that and figure out a uptime measurement, which is usually measured in percent. And we try to achieve a really high percentage, like 5 9s or 3 9s. So we talked about those different levels, the 5 9s and the 3 9s. We talked about service level agreements, how we are guaranteeing our customers a certain level of uptime. We talked about SLA durations and maintenance windows.